A 404, I believe. For those of you who are watching, my name is Toby. I am 40 years old. I train to live an active, self-sufficient, and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep. I try to sleep between 7 and 9 hours on a night. Last night was a bit on the short side, probably closer to 6. Minding what I eat. I try to eat within my energy balance. I try to eat healthy, whole-cooked, homemade meals, wholesome homemade meals, and I try to eat 120 to 150 grams of protein in a day. My strength training, conditioning training, and mobility training, alternating on the days. Today is mobility, tomorrow is conditioning with running, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday usually are strength conditioning with kettlebells. This is all about the way I feel, not about the way I look. It is 5:40 a.m. where I'm at in Amsterdam time, and if you're watching this, maybe you are starting your Saturday morning, maybe you are ending your Friday night because you're in the USA, maybe your Saturday is already halfway through because you are you are ahead of me in time. But wherever you are, thanks for dropping by, saying hi, and watching. Like I said, this is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. I want to feel fit and competent and capable for life at 40, and the only way I've really understood how I can do that is by keeping up with my physical health and fitness, which will also impact my mental, emotional health, fitness, and my ability to do the things that I want to do in life, which is why we're here. Today we're doing mobility. I'm going to hit the timer and get started, doing 40 seconds for each exercise. I'm just going to go through a series of different exercises in about 20 minutes, starting with the top, the neck, and the shoulders, then moving our way down to our ankles. Going to add some rotator cuff work at the end, with a band and with a very light and small kettlebell. And I have a window open upstairs. It seems to be freezing outside, so let's see how long I actually keep that open this morning before I find it gets too cold to work out nicely. But a bit of fresh air is always welcome and always good. All right, like I always say, friends, we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on, and the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So I'm going to hit the timer, and we are going to get started at 5:45 this morning. How has your week been? It is, by the way, February 1st. And February 1st is the beginning of the second month of the year, which means 2024 is firmly behind us, and 2025 is where it's at. So any resolutions we had, we have either stuck to, about 10% of the people, maybe. The rest of us, 90% of the people, if you are normal or somewhat average, then you've already given up on your resolutions. And that is completely fine, because we don't need New Year's resolutions to work on our health and fitness. We need a plan for our lives. That's what we're going to talk about today as we train, or as we go through these different mobility exercises. Oh, by the way, if you're ever wondering how anyone looks all slim and fit, it's because they're not breathing the moment they're taking the picture. I'm joking, but it's part of the equation. It's called posing. In any case, let's talk about health and fitness, and specifically health and fitness in our 40s, because we face a number of problems and start at the highest level, which is the world we live in today. And the world we live in today is not the world that we were made to live in because of the way we produce foods, the way we're working on the neck. By the way, I'm just going to look side to side. The way we travel, the way we build, the way we move around. Basically, we are making the environment we live in more hostile through what we breathe, what we eat, what we drink, and also we don't give ourselves the opportunity to move enough. And the combination of noise, both outdoors or indoors, through things like continuous media streams we can turn on, the quality of the water, food we drink and eat, the quality of sleep we're getting because there's so much light in the world, the quality of movement that we get because we've designed our world around sitting, to get to work lying comfortably, to sleep sitting, to work and sitting to entertain ourselves means that we are not using our bodies, and we are slowly over time becoming unhealthy and losing capabilities that we should naturally hang on to if we want to be able to live life an active, self-sufficient, and adventurous life. So, those are some of the challenges that we face. And now you might say, well, I'm the exception. It's great. This channel is not for you. But if you recognize yourself in the following image, then maybe we have something to talk about, and you want to hit like and subscribe to my channel and continue this conversation with me about health and fitness. My guess is your life might be something like this. You sleep anywhere between 6 and 10 hours on a given day or a given night. So you go to bed. Who knows, maybe you have the facilities to take a shower or a bath, but you have a bed or a cot, maybe a studio, maybe a one-bedroom apartment, maybe a small house, and you sleep 6 to 9 hours in a night, if you're lucky. Maybe closer to 6, maybe even less than 6. Before you go to bed to sleep, you are either out drinking with friends, or eating with friends, or you are sitting around playing computer games. And you have been for hours on end, at least 2, maybe 4, 5, or 6, and or you've been binge watching TV shows on any of the streamers or on YouTube. Well, between those activities and going to bed, maybe you are scrolling a little bit, and that's something that you're doing constantly throughout the day, and you're doing all that sitting and drinking, sitting and eating, sitting and gaming, or sitting and watching, seated on a chair or a couch or something. Sound familiar? It sounds familiar. You go ahead and you let me know in chat. Now, before you've done that evening program, or maybe that is your entire day and your entire life, You may have been studying or working, and if you've been studying, you've probably been seated most of the day in a seat, walking to and from lectures, maybe, or classrooms. Or you've been in an office walking to and from some meetings, maybe. Most of the exercise you got was the commute. And you've just been seated in your cubicle or at your desk. Maybe. Or you do have an exercise that demands you are physically working. Maybe you're working in a warehouse, moving around, packing, lifting boxes. Or you're working cash register and you're sitting. Okay, so how are we doing so far? Now throughout the day, you might be eating. Remember, we're still describing the problem that we face, the challenge that we face. So let's look at your breakfast. Your breakfast may have come from a plastic container. Maybe it was pre-made. Maybe it was completely pre-packaged, right? Most likely. And pre-made pancakes or granola or any kind of other breakfast material, packaged milk or an alternative drink, soy milk for you pull out of a fridge, maybe something quite sugary, fatty. And if you look at the list of ingredients, you're going to see that there are a lot of things in there that you would not, that's one of my alarms going off, that you would not generally have in the house, right? You would not generally have 12 out of the 14 ingredients that go into something that is preserved and pre-packaged and pre-made into the house. All right, so that's breakfast. Might have some coffee, might have a coffee with a huge walloping gallon of milk and some other stuff poured into it. I drink my coffee black, by the way, but could be, right? Could be. That's you. Something there. Ooh. Someone's woken up. Let's see if Mom's going to be okay with that. Otherwise, it's going to be a short live stream where we've only talked about a problem and not about a solution. Let's see. All right. There we go. Mom has arrived on the scene. Okay. All right. Well, since someone is his mom, he wants to come down to eat. I'm afraid I won't be able to stay on a lot longer. So we were talking about food, and we were talking about snacks, right? We had coffee. We have our snacks. It's pre-packaged. How many of us have 2 bananas and eggs for snacks? No. We, of course, are going for the convenient, tasty options that have been engineered to appeal to our palate simply because companies can produce those with cheap ingredients and charge us a lot of money for the privilege of being allowed to eat those. Well, let's think about the snacks. What we eat throughout the day. Are we eating with any kind of purpose or goal, or are we eating to satisfy that need to eat something? Probably to satisfy that need to eat just something. Great. All right. All the while we're sitting in one of those jobs we described before, waiting for the day to end, headed towards that evening program that is filled with more sitting before we lie down to sleep and start that cycle all over again. All right? And that's what I mean when I say the world we live in, the world we inhabit every day, is not the world that we as human beings were made for, and it's having a detrimental effect on our health. Now, there are ways to stay healthy and stay fit and deal with the world, but we also need to accept that we're fighting a bit of an uphill battle when it comes to improving and maintaining our health and fitness, because there are challenges we have control over: how much we sleep, the types of food we eat, how much we move and exercise. And there are things that we have absolutely no control over, like the quality of the food that is available within the stores that we shop at, and how contaminated it is, how it's packaged with things like microplastics, chemicals, preservatives, pesticides, those kinds of things. So, realistically, right, working on our health and fitness is, to a certain extent, very much about controlling all the things that we might be able to control, and letting go of the things that are somewhat beyond our control, beyond the votes that we cast if we live in a democracy. Paul H. in there you go. Well, I'm working on our hip mobility here. So what are the things that we can control, right, in that world? Well, I described a couple of things already. So how much can we move? Well, it's a trade-off of time, in a way, right? Let's start with movement, not exercise, like I categorize the third of the big three: sleep, nutrition, and movement. Exercise is a form of movement, but there are different ways to move. And by the way, I can tell someone is very awake. So I'm afraid that some people are going to come down soon and the stream is going to have to end. But movement, we have opportunities to move if we are willing to carve out the time for it. And if we are spending a lot of our time sitting in the evening, sitting and drinking, sitting and eating, sitting and watching, or if we are spending our time moving, or a small part of that time moving, we are already making big improvement. And movement doesn't necessarily mean exercise. Movement can be as low intensity as a walk or some other activity like gardening or, well, I guess actually that's it, riding a bike. Just doing something to get from A to B that is not using a car or public transport or anything like that, all right? Just movement. But that is like movement that might stimulate our cardiovascular system. And there's also movement like what we're doing now, which is using the full range of motion of our joints and our body, overhead, squatting, standing back up, reaching, bending over, all kinds of things that our body is designed to do that throughout the course of the day, unless we're participating in some sort of team sport or combat sport or various kinds of athletic endeavors, we are not going to be able to actually use the full range of motions of our body in our regular day-to-day. And that, by the way, is a shame. It's a shame because we are capable of doing such cool things. You know, like we don't have to be NBA basketball players or Olympic gymnasts or world-class judokas or UFC fighters or the fastest runners in the world to be strong, capable, and fit enough to make good use of the full range of motion that our bodies are made to perform at and to use. So there's something to be said for reevaluating the flow of the day from breakfast to the commute, to work, to the commute, to the time we spend at home. And how we can find pockets simply for movement. So that's one. Two, let's look at how well we can sleep, because nutrition is a bit of a complicated one, as is exercise, right? If we want to be able to exercise, we need to understand where we stand, what we're capable of, how we go from low intensity and not having done a lot to building a strong, capable body that we can load more and more intense exercise on. And that's a process of, 3 months to 6 months to a year to 2 years before you get those really noticeable, lasting changes. But you can achieve incredible changes if you take movement, and specifically exercise and movement seriously, you get the right kind of guidance and help. But it's a big step. So let's start with simple movements. And let's talk about, sleep. So what are we doing before sleep? I don't think per se scrolling is bad, like reading stuff on the screen, but there's a certain type or amount of scrolling that, if you think about it, is simply overstimulating your brain. Just scrolling down and down an endless feed of pictures and images or snippets of information from strangers, people you've never met, till something grabs your attention and you open it and you read it. It's like roulette in a way. It's actually designed to be roulette in a way because it keeps you engaged, keeps you scrolling. Okay? Now, there are good things and bad things about media and phones. But when your brain gets overstimulated with news and information, by the way, we all have a slight bias to want to pick up the bad news, and dive into the dramatic stories, not the happy ones, not the good ones. We get stressed, we get worried, we start to think, get scared. Keeps us up at night. All right? Not a good way to spend the day or the end of our day if we're planning to have a peaceful night's rest. In the old days, they hadn't figured out. Just lie down, stare at the roof, or stare at the ceiling, stare at the stars, stare at the ceiling of the cave. Who knows what? After maybe doing some arts and craft work, maybe doing some drawing, maybe doing some storytelling, maybe doing some staring into the fireplace or the open fire that everyone was gathered around or that you'd made. And that was it. And you went to sleep and you lived by the rhythm, the sound of the animals, and the circle of night and day. That's not the case anymore, right? So you have all of these distractions, stimulants, what you eat, big heavy meals, maybe caffeinated drinks, soft drinks or coffee or anything that are making it harder for us to sleep well. And if we're not moving sufficiently and not sleeping well, it becomes a bit of a downward spiral, right? Because lack of sleep doesn't let us physically recover, doesn't let us, not lettuce as in the one you eat, doesn't let us mentally recover and learn and process the events of the day before. So what happens is, over time, because we're sleep deprived, we begin to function worse and worse. And we end up not doing so well in life. YouTube Punk, is that you? There you are, my friend. What happened to the fancy room? Well, I can tell you. How's life in Texas? I came back home. I hope life in Texas is treating you well and that your Friday night is a good one. I'm already on Saturday morning, and I can tell you the future looks bright and good. and it's cold here. They're engaged in a very interesting debate all the way up there. I wonder when they're going to come down. So my youngest woke up a while ago, but he and his mom are upstairs, and I'm worried they're going to come down to the living room where I've opened the door and it is freezing outside. And I have a feeling, because my wife likes the living room to be nice and warm and cozy, that she's not going to be too happy about my habit of letting in some fresh air in the morning. Usually I close everything and the heater is on, so it slowly, gradually warms up again by the time they get down. But not today. Well, we'll have a good laugh about it later. I'm glad to hear you smash your January goals, by the way. We were just talking about how the world we live in affects the ability and options we have without us even knowing it, and how the setting is more or less creating an uphill battle to stay fit and healthy over life and over time, because we just cannot keep fighting the pollution, the production, the lifestyle that we've created in most parts of the world. That's why I think a lot of people also flock to creators that have left it all behind, that have bought farmland and a barn somewhere, and just living their best life with nature, doing things they enjoy, being outdoors the whole day. It's one of those things that some of us might feel it's very far away, and maybe the way the world going it is. But we also need to remember we weren't made to sit in an office from 9 to 5, no matter how comfortable that was. How comfortable we think that makes life. There are a lot of mental health issues that stem from having that kind of structure to our life. And mind you, this is coming from someone who has a desk job, more or less. But I can see the effect it has on me. And I can tell you that I try very hard to at least find 4 moments throughout the day, sometimes 6, where I am physically moving to the point where I'm out of breath and my heart is racing. And it usually involves a couple of flights of stairs. Alright, we're going to do the suitcase deadlifts, and then we're going to move on to some rotator cuff work. Sure. Pedestrians, all cars. And I'm glad we get to chill together for a bit on your Friday night. Yeah, exactly, right? I think that's an environment that we've created for ourselves without realizing what that would do, because it seems safe and healthy and easy, but actually turns out it's quite the opposite. So we need to figure something out as people to make the world work for us and make ourselves a better part of the world again. But we'll get there over time. So that's done. Now, let's look at those rotator cuffs. In any case, that being said, I am going to have to end the stream in a minute because the family is up and coming down. So it's been a good Saturday morning for me. I hope for you as well. Thanks for dropping by and filling out the poll. I appreciate that. For those of you who said you smashed your January goals, great. Congratulations. Keep doing what you're doing in February. Unless you're joking because you don't have any goals. But still, you know, for me, January was a month of finding a rhythm, getting into it, and kind of figuring out where I stood, dealing with a little bug, dealing with a bit of lack of sunshine. But we're good now. We seem to have found our stride again. And working out every day has also reminded me of how that actually helps me feel good. And even if I don't feel like it, by the end of any of the workouts, whether that is mobility or strength or conditioning, we feel really good, right? Yeah, I know. Well, maybe, out there in Texas, isn't there an opportunity for you to go and do something similar? I think if you think about it, then there's a lot of space in Texas, a lot of beautiful things to see. All right, I understand. Probably a lot has changed since I was there 25 years ago. Well, maybe there's another place you can set your sights on, maybe, and come to Europe. And joke about it. Holland's a pretty nice place to live. But not a lot of open space and nature. Everything's packed, very densely populated. I've been thinking myself, it's one of the reasons also looking forward to summer, also to traveling, is to make a couple more videos about the outdoors, talking while we're there, because I like to spend time in the forests around. But that is not that our house is right in the middle of nature, which would be really nice. It is that we live in a small city that is surrounded by nature. Hallo, lief mannetje. Papa komt eraan. Papa zit even de thee. Ja, dat is goed. Papa gaat. Okay. Okay. Well, he's asking me to come up, so I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to come up. So, there you have it. It is the start of the day, and the first of the second of the early risers is up, and he's created a little fan club, and he's asked me to join him for some fun and play. So that's what's going to happen today. Friends, thanks for dropping by, for watching. I appreciate that. Remember, you're good just the way you are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. And the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So I will see you tomorrow. Just need to do one thing here, and then we're going to be off. All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the answers, and I'll see you tomorrow, friends. Take care. Take care, Texas. Be well.